All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Hanbul. I am a folio training specialist here at EBSCO. I'm based out of Brisbane, Australia, and I would like to introduce you to the electronic resource management side of things in folio. So there are a couple of applications in folio that you need to work with in managing electronic resources for your library, and they are organizations app, licenses, e-holdings, agreements, and dashboard applications. So to give you a brief introduction to each of these apps, the Organizations app, as you would imagine, is a place for you to create and manage any of the organizations that you interact with as a library. So you can store the organization name, the accounting information, the contact information, any terms or agreements that you have. So anything in general relating to organizations will be stored in this app. And the Organizations app is a building block for both electronic resource management as well as acquisitions. And then we have another app called Licenses. And this is where you would be creating and managing your terms of use. So many people do question me about the differences between the Licenses app and Agreements app. Now, Folio had separated these two things out of each other, and Licenses app is where you would be managing the actual terms of use. So what can you do with those electronic resources? What should you not be doing with those electronic resources, and so on. And we will look at the details of the terms of use and the licenses when we head into the live demo shortly. And then we have the eHoldings app. This is where you actually select or deselect any of the titles or packages that your library subscribes to. So if you start subscribing to a title, you can go into the eHoldings app and select them. If you stop subscribing to a package, you can go into the eHoldings app and deselect those titles or packages. And then we have the Agreements app, and I have a very short line for the intro of Agreements app. And I've just written that this is a hub for your e-resource management. So essentially, the Agreements app is where everything comes together. So an agreement would have an organization relating to that agreement. What are the actual terms of use for that agreement? And then we would also have agreement lines, which would be the titles and packages that you have selected in the eHoldings app, as in these titles and packages from that specific organization needs to follow these specific terms of use. So everything kind of comes together in the Agreements app, and that's why I like to call this as a hub for your e-resource management. And then last but not least, we have a little helper app called the Dashboard. And this helps you to create a personalized view of some of the information that you would like to review on a regular basis from the licenses or the Agreements app. So for example, if you want to review any licenses that are expiring in 30 days, you could create a widget in that dashboard. If you want to review any agreement records that you haven't added any agreement lines to, you can also review that information from the dashboard. So this is a little helper app that interacts with the licenses and the agreements app within Folio. And we will also go through these in live demo shortly. All right, so we are going to have a look into these 5 applications in Folio today, and let's start off with the Organizations app. So I've just pulled up this Emerald Publishing Limited organization record, and at the very top of this organization record, it gives me a little summary of that organization. So I'm looking at the name of the organization, I'm looking at the accounting code, the status of this organization, and also the type of the organization. So Folio's Organizations app does not limit you from containing or recording any organizations that you interact with. I've seen some libraries even entering in the names of the individuals if they are independent publishers. So any sort of organizations that you interact with can be stored in this application. It also helps you store some contact information. So perhaps if you want to have a list of all the sales contact or customer service contact in one place, you can do that. If you have specific names of the people, you can store them under the contact people. It also allows you to store any interface that you need to deal with for that specific organization. So for usage reports, if you need to go into the admin page, you have a link, you can even store credentials and so on. And for acquisitions part of things, yeah, you will be able to store your payment method, discounts, or even accounts detail or banking information in the organizations app. But at the very bottom, you also have a little link out to any agreement records that is linked to that specific organization. So in Folio, if you have any agreements that you have linked to that organization, it links out in both ways. So from that agreement record, you can come into this organization record, and from this organization record, you can link out to that agreement record as well. So all in all, Organizations app is there for you to store any organizations related information in Folio. Heading over to the Licenses app, this is where you can store the actual terms of use. So you can see that I've created this Emerald General license. I have a little summary at the top that this is a standard terms of use, the start date and the end date, and the primary organization that needs to that's linked to this license. And I can even store some internal context. So within the library, who manages these terms of use? And I can simply look at the internal context and look at the name and their role and their contact details so that I can reach out to these people if I have any questions about the general terms of use. Again, we're linking back to the organization record from here. And we can also store some core documents. So oftentimes libraries like to store the actual PDF of the terms of use into the core documents area. You can add an actual PDF file, you can add a link, or you can specify the physical location. And most importantly, you will be able to manage the actual terms of use. I'm not going to go through the step-by-step process of creating these terms, but essentially you will be able to view all of the configured terms and the values added to it. And you can also set the visibility between internal and public. If the visibility is set to public, that means these public terms will be displayed into any of the customer-facing interfaces, such as your publication finder interface. So this is an example of my publication finder interface that links out to my folio. And I'm looking at this specific title. And for that specific package, I can have a look into the actual license terms. So if you need to display any of the actual terms of use to your users, you can make certain terms as public, and they will be able to look at the public terms from the Licenses app in Folio. You can also categorize the terms. So if you want a different category or accordion for open access terms, you can create another accordion for that specific set of terms. You can also add amendments to it. So in 2025, I'm going to get some amendments that needs to be reflected. I can pre-configure that by adding an amendment. And I can also link back to the agreement that's linked to that specific license. So from the Agreements app, I'll be able to link it back to this license record. And from the Licenses app, I can link out to the Agreements record as well. And then we have the eHoldings app, and this is where you can search at the vendor level, the package level, or the title level. I've just searched for the vendor or the provider of Emerald, and I get a brief summary that I've selected 4 packages out of 286 from Emerald. And from here, I can just go ahead and review all of the packages. I do have a little filter to help me find the actual package of my choice. And I will be able to select or deselect any of these packages from here. So say I've started subscribing to this package, I can simply add this package to my holdings, and that has just selected the holdings for me for my library. And then coming to agreements, as I've said, this is the hub for electronic resource management. So I'm getting a summary at the top as well. I have an open-ended agreement record that started on the 1st of January in 2023 for Emerald Publishing Limited, ANZ. The status is active. And you can see that I have some previous agreement period. So perhaps my agreements renew every year. So I had an agreement in 2023. My current agreement is open-ended. And I have a little note saying that my agreement has been renewed. So I can look at all of the periods here. I can look at some of the internal contacts who manage this agreement. So if any librarian has any questions about this agreement, they can reach out to this internal contact. And an agreement line would have a list of all of the packages and titles that are abided by my controlling license. So which titles and packages belong to or is tied to which license happens in the Agreements app. So everything will come together in the Agreements app. So I can add or remove any of the titles or packages from the Agreements line. I can have a controlling license, or I can have a look into some of my if I had multiple historic licenses, I should be able to view them here. I'm also seeing some future amendments coming up in 2025. So it's giving me a link out back to that license record, but it's kind of summarizing the actual terms of use for me in the Agreements app so that I don't have to go to the license record to view the terms. I can stay in the Agreements app and look at the actual terms of use. So perhaps you are a librarian sitting at a desk, you get a phone call from one of your patrons saying, hey, I'm trying to access this journal, but I don't seem to have access. Can you please help me out? And perhaps you might be able to find your holdings and link back to the Agreements app and look and see that, oh, this title, the authorized user type, does not include alumni. So that is why you might not be able to access that title. So whenever you get any questions relating to your electronic resource, you should be able to stay in the agreement record and find most of the information that you're trying to look for in this one place. So again, agreement will serve as a hub for anything relating to electronic resource management. But it does also link up to the organization record or the license record if you need to look at it in more detail. Now, one last thing I wanted to show you briefly would be the dashboard app. And I did mention that this is where you can have a look into any of the licenses that have already expired or expiring soon. So you can see that I've got 4 licenses that are expiring soon. I have some active agreements without any agreement lines. So I need to make sure I go into these agreement records and add agreement lines or titles or packages to these agreements. So the dashboard app just gives you a lot of flexibility in building these widgets relating to your agreements or your agreement lines or your license records. So it kind of helps you track what's happening around your electronic resource management. And you also have the ability to share these dashboards with anyone within your organization, or you can keep them private to yourself as well. All right. I think it's my first time doing a great job in time management. I've managed to finish everything in 50 minutes. I don't have any questions in the chat, but I'm more than happy to stay around in this meeting room in case anyone has any questions. So please feel free to stay around and ask me any questions if you have any. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming to this webinar. I will share the recording with everyone. And if anyone has any questions about electronic resource management in Folio or Folio in general, please feel free to hit reply and ask me any questions. Thank you again for coming and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.